my dear learners. I am Dr. Akanksha Shrivastava, and today we are going to discuss the module named Understanding Margins and Marginality. The learning outcomes of the module are: first, to understand the concept and meaning of margins, marginality and marginalization. Second, to examine the complex and widespread nature of socio-economic marginalization in India. Third, to analyze the persistent socio-economic inequalities faced by reserved categories resulting from the historical discrimination. Fourth, to understand how Bollywood contributes to the reinforcement of caste-based stereotypes, impacting public perception and perpetuating social stratification. Next, to explain the elaborate preconceptions among these marginalized communities during disasters. Now, after these outcomes, let's start with our introduction about this particular module. Marginality and marginalization fundamentally shape human society's socio-cultural, economic and political dynamics. These concepts capture the complex dynamics between exclusion and inclusion and providing valuable insights into the wrath and hardships that these marginalized communities and individuals encounter. To understand and comprehend the problematic aspects of margin and marginality, it is crucial to critically examine their conceptual foundation and investigate altogether their profound consequences on individuals residing on the periphery. Fundamentally, the term margin, let's define this term. Fundamentally, this term margin signifies a thing's physical or symbolic limit, establishing its perimeter. The notion of margin also applies to societal frameworks, where they frequently refer to the areas or factions that are situated on the periphery of the dominant dialogue, where perspectives, issues, and life ordeals may go unnoticed or belittled. Therefore, the margin offers a framework to analyze exclusion's metamorphical, cultural and spatial aspects in each social context. This was about margin. Now talk about marginality. Conversely, this marginality surpasses the geographical boundaries to represent a condition of being situated on the edge, characterized by susceptibility and restricted availability of resources. It represents a state of being marked by economic, social or cultural instability, which is an ongoing struggle for recognition within the larger discourse of society. This marginality results from a multifaceted interaction of elements contributing to the continued marginalization of specific individuals or groups, and thereby sustaining a recurring pattern of exclusion. As an active process, if we talk about marginalization deepens the consequences and further deteriorates exclusion. Deliberate or systematic acts of exclusion marginalize individuals or groups, as is quite evidenced by the institutional practices and societal norms. As a force that confines and restricts agency, marginalization eternalizes cycles of disadvantage and limits growth and development opportunities. Understanding these concepts is of utmost importance because it has far-reaching consequences for societal frameworks and the experiences of these marginalized people. These diverse axes of identity, including gender, caste, ethnicity and socio-economic standing, they intersect with marginality to shape the narratives of exclusion and resilience that are uniquely individual. Analysis into margin, marginality and marginalization commences, and it becomes apparent that these notions are fluid and contingent upon specific circumstances. Such variations in manifestation can be attributed to the impact of historical legacies, cultural norms, and contemporary power structures on diverse societies. This particular module, it aims to deconstruct the intricate facets inherent to these notions and thereby furnishing the perspectives on experiences of individuals who inhabit these peripheries and laying the groundwork for a more nuanced comprehension of social justice and inclusivity. Following this, we shall explore the historical origins because that's very important. So we'll be exploring the historical origins and present day expression of marginalization in India. This particular module will examine marginalization's indigenous, socio-economic and caste-based aspects, shedding light on the obstacles these marginalized communities face and the initiatives to rectify the situations. Now, when we are talking about marginalization, it's very important to talk about socio-economic marginalization. So let's talk about socio-economic marginalization. The problem of socio-economic marginalization in India is complicated. It's not an easy one, and it's a very widespread phenomena as it connects with multiple aspects of poverty. This work discusses the connection between social, economic, and poverty-related factors contributing to marginalization. It also points out the challenges faced by marginalized groups, including caste-based discrimination, gender inequalities, urban-rural disparities, displacement of tribal lands, and the repercussions of globalization. To completely understand the present socio-economic marginalization in India, it is crucial to acknowledge the historical factors that have contributed to the formation of these inequalities. The long-standing caste system has profoundly influenced socio-economic systems by determining the allocation of resources, educational opportunities, and employment possibilities. The caste system, which remains prevalent in Indian society even today, persists as a source of socio-economic disparities and perpetuates the cycle of poverty. Dalits, categorized as a scheduled caste, often find themselves trapped in a perpetual cycle of poverty due to limited access to resources, employment opportunities, and quality education, which are so normal to us, which are so easily available to us. The Dalit groups have faced significant obstacles in their economic development and have been prevented from making progress due to the consequences of historical oppression. The convergence of gender and socio-economic marginalization acts as a crucial factor increasing poverty among women living in these marginalized neighborhoods. Rural women, particularly those from the Dalit community, face dual forms of discrimination. One based on their caste and the other based on their gender. A dual things acting together. As a result of patriarchal norms and limited opportunities for education and healthcare, women are forced into low-wage, physically demanding jobs, which perpetuates the feminization of poverty and sustains economic inequalities. Socio-economic exclusion is not just a problem in rural areas. It's highly significant in urban areas also. Significant disparities also occur in cities, slums, which are informal areas. These are the places where many people from disadvantaged groups live. And if we talk about essential services, education and healthcare, they are hard to get in these areas, which we are getting by putting up no efforts. And they have to fight for these. And these things, they slow the growth and isolates people in a cycle of poverty. This can be observed in urban neighborhoods where proper sanitization and healthcare facilities make people's health uncertain and the financial system even more vulnerable. Also, the fact that homes in these areas need to be officially recognized makes it harder for people to take advantage of regular job opportunities, which makes them even less financially independent. If we talk about tribal groups, so these tribal groups, they often live in remote yet resource-rich areas, but there they are socially and economically pushed to the edges of the society, leading to higher rates of poverty. They face financial instability because developmental projects have disrupted their traditional way of life by moving them to new land. Let's take a case, let's take an example. The Dongriya Kond group that lived in the Niyamgiri hills of Odisha might have had to move because of bauxite mining, which put their way of life at risk and pushed these individuals to the periphery of their community financially. Let's talk about caste-based discrimination. Caste-based discrimination in India is a lasting social problem that is complex as well as widespread. It has been persisting for hundreds of years. The nation's social, economic, and political situations are heavily affected by the hierarchical system which depends on this caste system, and it splits people into various categories of society. In this part of the module, we will give a thorough look at caste-based disadvantages, focusing on the identities connected to the caste system, the issues related to reservation, and the unique problems that tribal groups in India are experiencing. The caste system in India divides people into different groups based on their birth status. It is a historical and deeply rooted social order. This system is made up of different varnas such as Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. It also includes many subcastes and groups, creating a complex web of identities. Now, Dalits, who have been pushed to the edges of society for a long time as untouchables, are still being discriminated against and left out of society. Because of these problems, they find it harder to go to the school, to get a job, and even get married. See how basic things they have to struggle for. Even though laws are being passed to stop discrimination based on caste, social norms and biases still exist, and which keep these differences in places. The fact that these identities last for a long time shows how hard it is to break down these deeply rooted social orders. In recognition of past inequalities and discrepancies deriving from the caste system, affirmative actions, initiatives, specifically reservations, were implemented with the aim to uplifting communities that were less fortunate. The purpose of these reservations was to ensure that scheduled castes, that is SCs, scheduled tribes, that is STs, and other backward classes, that is OBCs, are adequately represented and offered opportunities in the domains of education, employment, politics, etc. For example, these communities are allocated a certain percentage of seats, positions in government employment and academic institutions. Even though reservations give power to underrepresented groups, arguments are still there. Some individuals say that the reservation approach could support caste-based differences actively and not resolve the genuine reasons why some people are left out. On the other hand, we have supporters who say that reservations are essential to correct the past wrongs and encourage acceptance. India is home to many tribal groups, each with its own language, their own cultural practices, and social and economic difficulties along with that. Tribal identity is often based on a deep connection to the land. Throughout the ages, these groups have faced issues such as being forced to move, having limited educational options, and being left out of economic activity. Even though the constitution protects them, many tribal areas still do not have enough money or basic amenities. The problem is complicated because attempts to preserve tribal culture contradict with developmental plans. See, when our Honorable President Shrimati Draupadi Murmu was sworn in as the 15th President of India and became the second woman President of the country, many addressed her as India's first tribal president. Let's talk about Bollywood, what role Bollywood is playing over here. Bollywood is an integral part of Indian culture, and it has had a significant effect on how people think about group identities. The way Dalits and lower caste people are portrayed as having typical skills like working as sanitation workers or being oppressed, it promotes a negative idea about them and makes social stratification stronger. The fact that media shows these kinds of images makes people worry about how they might affect the public opinion, because media can affect public opinion. Now, because people might believe these stereotypes, which would make it harder for some caste groups to fit in. The fact that lower caste people are not shown enough in the films leads to false assumptions. It limits the number of stories that can be told, which makes it harder to get a complete picture of the complex social and cultural setting. People increasingly want mainstream media to be more responsible now, fairer about portraying the caste identities. Filmmakers are told to avoid oversimplifying the stereotypes and use more accurate and inclusive stories. Social media sites have become powerful tools underrepresented groups can use to challenge the prevailing ideas and disprove these stereotypes. People from grassroots groups use the hashtags like hashtag Dalit Lives Matter, hashtag Adivasi Lives Matter on social media to bring attention to the problems the Dalits and Adivasis face separately. These campaigns make it easier for people to share their own stories, their experiences and points of views. This helps us understand the problem these groups face more thoroughly and accurately. The ability of digital platforms to bring about social change and challenge common stereotypes can be seen in how people use social media. Applying marginalized points of view worldwide through social media campaigns actually breaks down the established ideas and promotes a more open conversation. Throughout India's past, there have been times when people and communities from underprivileged caste have seen progress and improvement also. It is essential to recognize these good examples because they show how different projects and efforts can have an effect. Let's talk about certain such examples. So the first we are taking is Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences, KISS. Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences is in Bhubaneswar, Odisha, and it provides free education, accommodation, health facilities, job planning, sports facilities. The school covers everything from kindergarten to post-graduation and even beyond. The members of parliament have also appreciated the endeavors of KISS while talking about the Central Universities Amendment Bill 2023 in Lok Sabha recently on 7 December 2023. The second important thing is these people have started getting political representation. The local governance in Indian state has shown favorable outcomes from implementing reservation legislation. Panchayati Raj institutions allocate a specific proportion of seats for women and those in reserved categories. Consequently, there has been a rise in involvement of women and marginalized communities in decision-making procedures at the local level, giving them the political empowerment. In India, discrimination based on caste still exists, which makes emergency management efforts less effective and makes people more likely to be hurt. Now, let's discuss this caste based discrimination and disaster management, how this caste based discrimination affects disaster management. Discriminatory practices often make it harder for everyone to get the help they need, slowing down the aid distribution. It is possible that social hierarchies could affect how help is distributed, making it so that disadvantaged castes are hit harder during and after the disasters. Let's take a case. The Odisha State Disaster Management Authority OSDMA said that after the 2019 Fani storm, 203 multi-purpose cyclone shelters were built along Odisha's coast. The Community-Based Cyclone Shelter Management and Maintenance Committee, that is CSMMC, oversaw these shelters, and these shelters had advanced equipment for handling the crisis. Everything was in place. Still, the village's powerful caste, often leaders in the caste hierarchy, took over the infrastructure. The domes, an underprivileged community in Balbhadrapur, were not told about the cyclone hitting the coast until a last few hours before the disaster, because they did not have an opportunity to participate in this CSMMC. It has been claimed that powerful individuals from the community occupied cyclone shelters while Dalits, including the fisher community, they were denied the entry. Reportedly, these fishing families, they had to seek protection at a nearby college. Notably, the Bhoi community, who regard themselves as superior in the caste system, they also found shelter in a nearby primary school only. This incident underscores the intricate complexities of prejudice that exist among marginalized communities. Consistent experiences emerged throughout the district, exploring a disturbing absence of efforts from the governmental bodies, civil society organizations, and political factions to confront the matter. The plight of 25 dome families totaling 85 members was the focus of an article published in the Odia Daily Sambad on May 19, 2019. Despite the effective evacuation of more than 1.1 million individuals by the government, the obstacles confronted by marginalized communities during disasters persisted without resolution. It is worth mentioning that despite explicit prohibitions from the Special Relief Commissioner, these discriminatory actions continue to occur. The same happened in the occurrence of the 1999 super cyclone and cyclone Phylline in 2014. Aid vehicles allocated for Dalit villagers were looted by the inhabitants of neighboring regions. Consequently, a significant number of individuals from the Dalit group found themselves isolated in dangerous conditions, lacking the ability to seek shelter or obtain even the essential aids. Societally, unfairness arose in Puri also and Mayurbhanj regions during the COVID-19 outbreak, and the subsequent relief attempts were disrupted, were affected. Now, discussing all this, let's draft a conclusion for this module. What we can say is that adopting a comprehensive and unwavering strategy is essential to address the complexities of marginality, and marginalization in India. Understanding marginalization's historical, socio-economic, and cultural aspects is crucial for developing efficient solutions. As individuals, our combined efforts to raise awareness, to amplify the marginalized voices, and actively engage in the cause of social justice can help to dismantle these deeply ingrained structures of power. The aim of fairness and the integration of all individuals requires an ongoing introspection. learning, and a dedication to questioning the existing norms. By taking deliberate and united steps, we can strive to establish a society where there are no sites of exclusion, but rather spaces characterized by mutual humanity and comprehension. Through this effort, we understand the complicated nature of being on the margins and actively participate in altering the story of inclusiveness and fairness for our future generations. The journey is still in progress, and our shared responsibility is to navigate this intricate fabric towards a fair and peaceful society. And with this, we come to the end of the module. I hope you have enjoyed and learned something new about understanding margins and marginalities.